I've dedicated my life to saving bonobos, and now I've come to believe that bonobos can save us. I first learned about bonobos as a writer at National Geographic. I was assigned to work on a book project about the great apes. I knew about gorillas and orangutans and chimpanzees, but I was amazed to discover that there was a fourth great ape, the bonobo, which so strongly resembles us and in the most astonishing ways. I'd never heard of a bonobo, and now more than 30 years later, still most people don't even know they exist. Yet they are humankind's closest relatives. Bonobos are so different from our other close relative, the chimpanzee, the one we're usually compared to. According to evolutionary theory, we are equally related. So the human line went off in one direction and the pan line split again, creating two species, bonobos and chimps. While very similar in some ways, they're like polar opposites in others. Chimpanzees have a patriarchal, male-dominated, competitive society. They are the only primates besides humans that wage violent, premeditated attacks on others of their own kind, usually over territory and resources, and often to the death. Sounds familiar, right? Same things most human wars are fought over, including the ones raging right now. Bonobos, on the other hand, share resources and territory instead of fighting over them. Among bonobos, the females are in charge. They have a They have a peaceful, matriarchal, and more egalitarian society. When bonobo groups meet in the forest, they greet their neighbors, share a feast, and have a little love fest. See, bonobos are the only primate besides us humans that has sex, not just for procreation, but also for recreation, for bonding, to relieve tension, or simply for pleasure. Bonobos make a lot of love, and they do so in every form and fashion, including with members of either gender. In essence, bonobos are bisexual. Beyond that, there is no sexual coercion in bonobo land. This is in stark contrast to chimpanzee society, where females are forced to mate with ranking males and are often battered in the process. Bonobo females are free to choose their mates. Bonobo females make alliances with each other, often sealed with sexual bonds of their own, and this is how they keep the physically stronger males in check. Sure, they have spats and squabbles every now and then, and when they do, they kiss and make up. Bonobos are all about peace and love. That's why they're called the hippie chimps. They truly do exemplify the 1960s credo, make love, not war. It's as if bonobos and chimps represent the yin and yang of human nature, Venus and Mars, the female and male paradigms. Right in front of our eyes, we see the two sides of ourselves demonstrated in our closest relatives. As a student of psychology and a hippie at heart myself, I found something I could believe in with bonobos. I was so smitten that I quit my job at National Geographic to pursue my newfound passion. I had the good fortune to spend a whole summer with the world's most famous bonobo, Kanzi. Kanzi's a rock star. He's even jammed with Peter Gabriel and Paul McCartney. And he's really into Minecraft these days. But his biggest claim to fame is that he broke the language barrier. Yep, you can talk to him and he talks back. Bonobos can't speak as we do because of the anatomy of their throats. So a brilliant psychologist, Dr. Sue Savage-Rumbaugh, developed a sign language with symbols representing words that they use to speak with us. It was a magical experience to enter their world. I remember one day playing hide and go seek with Kanzi's sister, Pambanisha, crouching down on the riverbank, holding hands and looking each other in the eyes like shh, while the researcher on the prowl was searching for us. Then it was time to settle down for a little grooming. Pambanisha gently inspected my face, my hands, my hair. She picked a twig and sharpened it with her teeth, tracing underneath each fingernail. And then she proceeded to nibble them all off. Kanzi and Pambanisha were my first bonobo teachers, and from that point on, I was hooked. While it's taken a while for modern science to discover our close relationship with bonobos and the fact that we share almost 99% of the same DNA, the indigenous people of the Congo forest have known it all along. They've passed down legends about bonobos for generations, which have perpetuated taboos against hunting them. One of my favorites goes like this. One day, Zombe, or God, called all the animals to come get their tails. When it was the bonobo's turn in line, he got an itch on his back and stood up on 2 feet to scratch it. God took one look at him and said, "Well, I cannot give you a tail, for you are not an animal. You are a man." Bonobos think that's a good one. But despite our close kinship, bonobos are being hunted for food, smoked and sold for meat. Bonobos are endangered. As few as 15,000 survive today. That's not even enough to fill Madison Square Garden. I realized that we have so much to learn from bonobos, and time is running out to save them from extinction. So together with an amazing group of people, I co-founded the Bonobo Conservation Initiative. Our mission is to protect bonobos, preserve their habitat, and empower communities in the Congo Basin. Bonobos are found in only one country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. They inhabit the heart of the world's second largest rainforest, one of the lungs of the earth. This gigantic forest sequesters billions of tons of carbon and provides vital ecosystem services that are essential to mitigating climate change and sustaining all life. In short, we can't live without it. Bonobos inhabit the last bastion, some of the most remote territory remaining on the planet. And as a keystone species, they play a major role in maintaining the health of the forest. Laced with waterways and brimming with biodiversity, more than half the plant and animal species in Africa are found here. Yet in the midst of such untold beauty and natural riches, the Congo has been the scene of some of the worst atrocities this world has ever known. Back-to-back wars from 1996 to 2003 took more than 5 million lives, more than any war since World War II. Tens of thousands of women were raped as a weapon of war. This devastating conflict also increased pressure on wildlife with the influx of guns. It was in this context, as the Congo War was winding down, that we began our work for conservation, considering how can we best protect the bonobos and preserve their rainforest home. At that time, we didn't even know where bonobos existed in viable numbers. What we did know, however, was that we needed to begin with the people who share the forest with them. So we started at the grassroots with deep listening and learning from the local people who know their forests and their own needs best. At the time, the bonobo habitat was occupied by 3 warring factions. So we had the idea of a peace park. But in our conversations with the Congolese, they said, no, we do not want another national park where you draw a boundary and throw the people out. That won't work. People live here. We realized that we needed a holistic approach that worked within the culture, building upon indigenous knowledge and traditions, rather than imposing top-down, externally derived solutions. So that's how our vision for the Bonobo Peace Forest was born. A network of community forests supported by sustainable development, a model that serves both conservation and humanitarian needs simultaneously. Named in honor of the Bonobo's peaceful society, the Peace Forest serves as a source of inspiration and hope. It also provides a practical framework for peace by following the bonobo's own example of cooperation, partnership, and sharing of resources. Our motto is, Sali sa bonobo, pe bonobo, bako sali sa yo. That means help bonobos and bonobos will help you. Many indigenous legends are about how bonobos helped the ancestors in the distant past, showing them what foods to eat in the forest, medicinal plants, and more. One of the first things we did was to broadcast radio shows featuring these stories to help reinforce the traditional taboos. Radio is the only means of public communication that reaches the bonobo habitat. In many ways, it's like going back in time. There's no electricity, no running water, and very little cash economy. Infrastructure is broken down or non-existent. Smoked bushmeat is one of the only commodities that can survive long journeys to market on foot, loaded on a bicycle, or in a dugout canoe. There's very little means of livelihood. So if people need money for medicine or to pay school fees for their children, often their only option is to kill an animal and sell it. This situation is fueling the commercial bushmeat trade, which is decimating all wildlife throughout Central Africa. Bonobos are particularly susceptible because they only have one offspring every 5 years. So when you kill a bunch of bonobos, the population does not bounce back. Our work really kicked off at Kokolo Peri, where the Bongando people revere the bonobos as kin. There we forged a strong partnership with the local NGO and the local community, pooling our resources and developing solutions together. First, we trained and hired trackers and survey teams who monitor the bonobos in the forest. The Kokolo Peri trackers followed 3 bonobo groups for a decade, paving the way for a long-term research program now led by Harvard University, which is making groundbreaking discoveries like this. Bonobos are getting famous for their spirit of cooperation. They just made the front page in the New York Times. In tandem with our work in the forest, we collaborate with the local communities to meet their needs. At Kokolo Peri, the people had no access to health care, so together we established a health clinic. Their staple crop was stricken with a disease, so we partnered with agricultural experts to provide seed stock and training in sustainable farming techniques. We've helped to empower women through scholarships and microenterprise opportunities. And in response to the local people's request for an institute of higher learning in the region, we co-founded a technical college, which is now accredited and preparing the next generation of conservation leaders. These efforts and more led to the establishment of 2 official protected areas to date, the Kokolo Peri Bonobo Reserve and the Sankuru Nature Reserve, together spanning 9 million acres. That's the size of Massachusetts and Rhode Island combined. Initiated by the local people themselves, these reserves blaze the trail, pioneering a new paradigm for community-based conservation. Seeing the example of Kokolo Peri, neighboring communities became inspired to protect their bonobos, to initiate their own reserves, and to join the Peace Forest network. In this way, the Bonobo Peace Forest is self-replicating. Author Denis Béchard calls this phenomenon viral conservation in an article he wrote for Solutions Journal and an award-winning book about our work. While we've only scratched the surface so far, and all of these efforts need to be scaled up, we have proven that our community-based partnership approach does work and can ultimately be self-sustaining, especially as new financing mechanisms are coming online that compensate local communities for the global services their forests provide. Our goal is to expand and connect these protected areas with habitat corridors. And when we do, you'll be able to see the Bonobo Peace Forest from space. The Peace Forest has been endorsed by the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo and by dozens of local communities. It was honored by the Buckminster Fuller Challenge for providing sustainable solutions to problems we face here on spaceship Earth. And most recently, our longtime partner, Vie Sauvage, won the UN Equator Prize. This prestigious award celebrates Indigenous communities for innovative solutions to biodiversity loss and climate change. 80% of the remaining biodiversity on the planet is on Indigenous land. So many communities are stepping up to protect their forests and the bonobos within, and all they need is a helping hand. In our work for conservation, we also rescue orphans, the tragic byproducts of the bushmeat trade. Hunters kill the mothers and try to sell the babies as pets. This is Iboko. One day we spotted a guy riding a bike down the street holding a baby bonobo and tore out after him. Like most hunters, he didn't know the bonobos were endangered and only found in his country, or that it's against the law to kill them. As a matter of fact, when we first got started, the provincial police weren't even informed. Iboko served as an ambassador, and the police became our allies. Iboko was so weak, dehydrated, and traumatized. She stayed largely attached to my body for a whole week. We ate together, played together, peed together, and sometimes she peed on me, and slept together. The last day, we had to get up early to fly to Kinshasa to take Iboko to the orphanage there. When the alarm went off at 5 a.m., I was groping around in the dark under the mosquito net. It wasn't where I'd put it. Finally, I found my flashlight, and I saw that Iboko had grabbed the clock. She was sitting there at the foot of the bed, scrutinizing it and poking at it, trying to figure out what was this strange contraption that was making so much noise. It struck me that the alarm really is going off for the bonobo species. And if we don't stop giving in to our worst instincts, the alarm is going off for us as well. We must act now before it's too late. By protecting bonobos and expressing the bonobo side of ourselves, we can meet this moment, and together we can create a better world.